Stevan Harrell?
Oh yeah, you must be Stefano.
Yes, it's me. Do you have
Yeah.
a couple of minutes?
Yeah, just a second, I'll come down.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, good to see you. Thanks for coming all the way out here.
So, why are we here?
Well, we're here on a fishing boat. I'm here with my friend Pete Knutson, who's
Nice to meet you.
also
Hi.
an anthropology
Pleasure to meet
professor
you,
and a fisherman. This is his boat. And we're here because boats are really, and fishing in particular, is an important part of sustainability, which is what the course is about.
Yeah. So, what do you mean by sustainability?
Sustainability is the idea that we keep things going. It's really very simple. It's not about keeping things exactly the way they are. It's about adapting to change so that we can keep our environment and our society and our economy healthy and pass it on to our children and grandchildren.
So, what else are we gonna look at in the course?
What other kinds of concepts?
Yeah.
Well, I think resilience is a really important one.
Yeah.
Resilience is about being able to respond to what we call disturbances.
Yeah.
In other words, we have major weather events, we have climate change, we have big political events, changes in taxes, changes in the way the country is run. And how does an economy, how does a region keep going and adapt itself to those kinds of changes?
Yeah. And why did you decide to teach this kind of course?
Well, I've been interested for a long time as an anthropologist. And again, I think, somebody like Pete, who is actively involved in an industry that depends on sustaining our environment, and is studying and continues to study and teach about the social side of things and the economic side of things, because we're keeping our environment sustainable for the other species, of course, but also primarily for ourselves.
And I'm not quite sure if I understand how all these concepts reflect back to everyday life. So if I'm not a fisherman, so why do I care? Why do I have to care?
Well, do you like fish?
I do actually.
You do like fish. Would you like them to be reasonably priced?
Yeah.
Would you like them to be safe to eat?
Yeah, actually.
Would you prefer that they come from this part of the world rather than all the way from Italy, where you come from?
Yeah, actually, if I'm here, yeah.
And so this is all about sustainability. We're not going to have fish unless we have the water for the fish. And it's got to be clean. And we're not going to have fish unless fishermen can make a living, right?
Well, that's right. And we wouldn't have this community down here in Seattle, this is the largest fishing port in the United States.
Oh, wow.
We wouldn't have this if it wasn't sustainable. If you didn't have a lot of small businesses and small families, we've got generations of people that come down here.
Wow.
So that's all about sustainability.
So if you think about it, if you want to eat local, good tasting fish, you've got to have a fisherman who can make a decent living catching them. You've got to be able to have a transport system. But more than anything else, you have to have the ocean at a particular, don't want it to get too acid, right? Yeah. You're going to have the streams being healthy and the estuaries and the spawning places and the habitat. All of this feeds in, literally feeds in, if the fish are going to feed and you're going to feed on the fish.
And what about teaching this course online? What do you think about that? What do you think about online teaching?
I haven't tried it before. I've tried partially online courses. I did a course a couple of years ago actually in Singapore where we had students from all over the world. We had students from Korea and Japan and China and Singapore and the US.
Yeah.
And some of the US students were from other countries, so it's one from Israel. And we all met online for 6 weeks, and we did assignments online for 6 weeks.
Wow.
And then we met in Singapore for 2 weeks and got together and had an intensive so it was kind of a hybrid course.
Yeah.
So this will be the first time I've taught a completely internet course.
That's fantastic.
But I use the internet a lot in my regular courses.
Yeah.
We do discussion boards. I always have people read stuff before class and they're required to post something.
Yeah.
And so that means that students can't get too lazy, and not do the reading while they'll do it later because they're having an assignment on it. And so when you come to class and people discuss things, they're all prepared.
Yeah.
And often they're really excited about it.
And what did you learn in developing the course? So since it was the first one entirely online, what did you learn?
Well, one of the things I learned was the value of going on location and doing videos and doing interviews. Today you're talking to me, but I've interviewed a lot of experts in the videos for the class. Interviewed a climate change expert, I've interviewed a ecologist for a Cedar River watershed here. I interviewed a couple of elders from an indigenous group that I work with in the mountains in China. I've interviewed a historian for the Muckleshoot tribe here.
Yeah.
And so I learned the value of actually getting out someplace and talking about something as part of education. And I think I've also learned about working within certain kinds of parameters.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit of a strain for me to have to do everything that the people who are putting together the internet program ask a professor to do. You got to do a lot of more preparation ahead of time.
Yeah.
You know, you teach a class, right? And you want to change it, you change it in the middle. You've gone half an hour and you think, oh, I had an idea, I'll do something else, right?
Yeah.
But you can't do that online because it has to be all set. And so you have to build something that you can live with for a while. You teach a course 2 or 3 times and you're not going to be able to change it very much.
Yeah.
So I think I learned that also.
So I actually have a question. What does social science actually means?
Well, this program is called Integrated Social Science.
Yeah.
And I like to think about it as integrating the study of society from a whole lot of different viewpoints.
Yeah.
We talked about the economics of fishing. We talked about how we have to have small businesses and fishermen who can make a living.
Yeah.
And we have to talk about we have a reasonable market for products.
Yeah.
And that's the economic side. But we also have very much the social side. Pete talked about a community of fishermen.
Yeah.
You really have a community
Right.
if you're on a boat, but there's also a community between boats.
Yeah.
Right, and I understand that sometimes you get in kind of a little competition with people.
Well,
and you have to be able to
There's actually, I would say, more mutual aid between fishermen than there is
Oh, that's a good
competition.
point.
Yeah.
You know, to a certain, there's competition, but when you're out there, you depend on other people.
True.
When you're out in the ocean with a crew, you depend on them to stay alive.
Yeah.
You know, but the social science question, you know, anthropology is not like control variable experiment.
Yeah.
I mean, you're out there, you're interviewing people, you're dealing with the economics, the politics.
Yeah.
We synthesize it. It's not like a natural science.
On the other hand, in this class, there's a lot of natural science.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about the physical environment.
Yeah.
We're talking about the ocean. We're talking
Yeah.
about the forest. We're talking
Right.
about the grasslands.
Right.
We're talking about the farms.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
And so when we think about integrated social science, I think about it as integrating, not drawing boundaries.
Yeah.
You say, okay, this is
Yeah.
social science. Okay, humanities are over
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Natural sciences over here. I want to go both ways.
Yeah.
I want to be able to talk to the ocean chemist to figure out, whether the shellfish, for example, are going to be able to survive below a certain pH. And I want to be able to talk to the artist about what the environment means aesthetically to
Yeah.
people. And I want to be able to draw all this kind of thing in.
Yeah. So, do you have anything else that you learn thinking about like your developing of the course? What else did you learn?
I think I learned that we're getting corporate beyond the point to which I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
I think I've learned that professors are in danger of becoming kind of knowledge cows for the corporate university. That they milk us for what we know and give us less and less professional judgment about what we want to do with it. And I think that I love the internet. I love all aspects. Well, I don't love all aspects. I love 90% of the internet.
Yeah.
I don't like spam,
Yeah.
But I feel that because this is being run for a profit by the university, it's a kind of a canary in a coal mine about what the university is going to be in 10 years.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of glad that I'm retiring, because I think what's going to happen to education would happen to medicine about 20 years ago, which is that doctors quit being professionals whose judgment was respected and started being people who had to follow rules set by insurance companies.
Yeah.
And I see the UW in particular, as a large university, is becoming more like this. And so professors are becoming more and more like employees.
Yeah.
Now, maybe I feel like I've had a privileged existence for the last 40 years.
Yeah.
I've been able to do more or less what I wanted to do, when I wanted to do. I worked my tail off. I've actually recorded my actual hours of work, and I average about 61, 62 hours of work over the years. Less during the summer, of course, but still, working during the summer. And it's been privileged. I don't make tons of money, but I make more than the average working person. And so it's been a privileged existence. Maybe we deserve that, maybe we don't deserve that.
Yeah.
But we're not going to have it much longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that this kind of this thing is being, I remember when they talked to us about UWEO putting this degree program into practice, that we're talking about we have to run it for about 50% of the cost per student of an on-campus course.
Yeah.
And why? Why can't we, why are we thinking about students in terms of cost-benefit
Yeah.
analysis?
Yeah.
Why aren't we thinking about educating the students?
Yeah.
So I think that this is something that I've actually learned from preparing this course. I'm not sorry I did it. I had a great time.
Yeah.
I had a great time working with Ryan for one thing, and all the people who worked as designers. And I have had, within these limits, a bit of freedom to exercise creative impulses about how to do creative pedagogy. And in some ways better, because we can go out here and do an interview
Yeah.
on a boat. We can go out and do an interview in a watershed. I can do an interview in China.
Yeah.
And this is things that I ordinarily wouldn't do when preparing a regular class, although maybe I should. So it's been two ways. On the one hand, it's the university becoming corporate, which scares me. And on the other hand, it's, well, okay, let's let's make some lemonade here.
Yeah.
And how do we work within this corporate
That's
university
right, yeah.
structure to still have an experience for students that'll be a learning experience and not just a credentialing experience?
It just kind of makes you realize that the university should be a unique place in society
Yeah, yeah.
Where you can really engage in cultural encounters and learn.
Yeah.
And so I guess it's a question of what values are we going to be selecting for the future.
Yeah.
Steve was my chair of my dissertation committee
wow.
in 1987 when
wow.
I wrote my dissertation on the culture of fishing boats.
Oh wow.
So we go back a ways.
Yeah. Well, this was a pleasure to meet you both, and it was very helpful. So thank you so much, and
Well,
thank
you're
you
gonna
for asking me
register
to
for the
come over
class?
here. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, I will.
Very good.
Thank you so much. Bye.